Today on Politics Unplugged, he's known for coming up short in Arizona elections, so we ask Rodney Glassman why he thinks he can win this time. Plus, one of the state's biggest power companies had an election. Do the results mean anything? And President Trump threatened to destroy Iran's civilization. How did Arizona's congressional delegation react? The panel weighs in now on Politics Unplugged.
And good evening, I'm political editor Dennis Walsh. This is Politics Unplugged. Rodney Glassman has become a familiar face in Arizona politics, regularly appearing on the ballot for a variety of races. This time, he's hoping to be the Republican nominee for Attorney General and take on Democrat Chris Mays in a matchup he lost back in 2022. And he's here to talk about that right now. And thank you very much for stopping by. Here's the first time you've appeared here as the candidate for Attorney General this time around. So as always, just give us your elevator pitch, 30 seconds. Tell us why you think you're the man for this job.
Well, Dennis, I'm running for Arizona Attorney General to protect our law enforcement, to protect our kids, and to protect Arizona's prosperity. You know, we live in a Republican state where President Trump won by over 5 percentage points. But we right now have an insane Democrat Attorney General who sued the administration 40 times in the past 15 months. And so Republicans need to nominate a Republican with the experience to defeat Chris Mays in November. I'm proud that the Maricopa County Sheriff, Jerry Sheridan, is chairing my campaign, and I look forward to earning everyone's vote in July. And
before we get into the issues, let's talk a little bit about your resume. Now, we put together a graphic to show that you've been around for a while. You've been running for races for almost 20 years here. You can see right there, you were elected to the Tucson City Council back in 2007. You were a Democrat at the time. And since then, you ran and lost the run for the U.S. Senate. You lost to John McCain back in the day. You ran for the Arizona Democratic Party chairman, lost for that. Then you switched parties, I believe, in 2015. You ran for the CorpCom, then Maricopa County Assessor and Attorney General again a few years ago. Now, those races were all losses. Now, the reason I bring this up, it's part of your story, it's part of your record, but you are asking Republican voters to give you the nomination. Can they trust that you would bring home the victory when it looks like you haven't even won a major race as a Republican since you started running?
Well, Dennis, that's a great question. And yes, like President Trump and like President Reagan, I left the Democrat Party. I actually registered Republican June 16th, 2015, which was the day that President Trump announced his candidacy for president. The Democrat Party has continued to go to the left since 2011, and I grew up, got married, had 2 daughters, started serving in the military, and started paying taxes and grew up to be a Republican. Now, what's interesting about this Republican primary is there's only 2 candidates. As you may know, I'm a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force JAG Corps. I'm a reservist now at Luke Air Force Base. I've been a prosecutor for 17 years. I've prosecuted drug dealers and financial crimes and protected victims of sexual assault. When I put my uniform on now as lieutenant colonel to go out to Luke, I run the active duty legal office of over 25 JAGs, paralegals, and support staff. And as you know, I've also made a living in the private sector as a commercial litigator and a plaintiff's attorney. So I fed my family working for strangers who pay me with their own money to be their lawyer. In our Republican primary, my only opponent is a termed out state legislator. He's 50 years old. He's a realtor, and he got his law license 25 months ago. He's never had a client. He's never prosecuted a case. He doesn't even carry professional insurance, so he's not a practicing attorney. And in the Attorney General's race, experience matters because I'm running to lead the largest law office in the state of Arizona with over 400 attorneys and 1,000 support staff. And so this Republican primary is unique, running against someone who's objectively unqualified with 0 experience as a lieutenant colonel who's been working as a lawyer for almost 2 decades.
But again, he has got experience actually winning elections. It comes down to when people see this, they're like, you know, Rodney Glassman, I see him on the ballot every couple of years. Can we trust that he's going to pull off the victory when he hasn't done so in almost, again, since you were on the Tucson City Council as a Democrat?
That's a great question. And Dennis, the chairs of my campaign, the Maricopa County Sheriff, Jerry Sheridan. Why? Because only the Attorney General can protect law enforcement. The Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Horn, because as you know, the Department of Education has no attorneys. They're all assistant attorney generals who work for our elected attorney general. And the former Senate president, Karen Fann, who was frustrated in 2020 when the Attorney General refused to do his job of investigating the 2020 election. Those are my campaign chairs. I'm also proud to have the support of Congressman Gosar, who leads up in the river cities. He's endorsed Andy Biggs for governor and my campaign, Rodney Glassman, for Attorney General, because he says we're the two people he trusts will do the job. But what's also interesting, Dennis, remember my opponent, in addition to having never practiced law, has also never ran out of other than one legislative district in the East Valley, and never in a truly contested, tough election. So in 2018, as you remember, I was the Republican nominee with Justin Olson for the Arizona Corporation Commission. I have ran and won a Republican primary statewide. And yes, after Tom Steyer, the liberal Democrat from California, gave $5 million to the Democrats, I lost by 8,000 votes out of 4.2 million 3 weeks after the election. So yes, if voters are looking for someone who's a quitter or someone with no experience, then I'm probably not their guy. But if they're looking for the only Republican running who's a veteran, who has served as a prosecutor, and who has made a living as a practicing attorney, and who has the support of elected officials like our Maricopa County Sheriff, then hopefully they'll be excited about voting for Rodney Glassman.
Yeah, and part of that resume too, you were registered as a lobbyist from 2014 into 2023. What assurances can you give to voters out there that there's going to be no conflict of interest? What kind of steps are you going to take to ensure that no conflict of interest, get in the way that you are going to carry out justice the way it's supposed to be if you are elected?
I advocated for the expansion of full-day kindergarten in the state of Arizona. The number one indicator for third grade reading. That was my experience.
That was one lobbyist, but you also worked for other clients out there?
Oh, I've had a successful law career. I've been a commercial litigator. I've worked for leaders from public companies in the state, like Mobile Mini, like U-Haul. I have the only person running for Attorney General who's made a living
but you were a lobbyist for like 10 years.
As an attorney, working as an attorney, filing lawsuits, opening investigations, advocating, settling challenges. And that's what we need as our Attorney General. We don't need a Democrat who's simply weaponizing the office and building a resistance resume. And we definitely don't need someone who literally has never practiced law like my Republican primary opponent.
Let's talk a little bit about that. You've, went after Chris Mays. You've attacked her for the lawsuits against this current administration. Well, one of the lawsuits was a big win I think a lot of people would look at for consumers. She won a big lawsuit at the U.S. Supreme Court, again, taking down President Trump's tariffs. Now, nationwide, on average, it was estimated that would cost households about $2,600 a year. Here in Arizona, about $1,500 a year. Would you not have sued to get rid of the tariffs?
On day one as Arizona Attorney General, I will withdraw Arizona from the 40 clickbait lawsuits that Chris Mays has filed against the Trump administration, and I will rescind the political indictments. Dennis,
you think taking away the tariffs, suing to take the tariffs down was a bad decision?
I believe that every decision made by Chris Mays, who ran on attacking law enforcement, on attacking President Trump, on filing lawsuits because she thinks that biological boys should compete against girls. Every decision that Chris Mays makes.
We can get into all the other stuff, but the tariffs there, you think that was a bad decision?
Step number one of the Attorney General for the state.
Families money.
Step number one, if you're the elected Attorney General for the state of Arizona, is driving solutions. We cannot have an Attorney General like we have in Chris Mays, who goes on television shows like yours and talks about shooting ICE agents. We cannot have an Attorney General like Chris Mays, who's more focused on using her 60 investigators to go to Florida or New York to harass an 84-year-old Mayor Giuliani about the 2020 election, instead of advocating and making sure that unlicensed contractors aren't taking advantage of our seniors. Those are the kinds of issues that the Attorney General with the 400 attorneys and 1,000 support staff need to be working on. And the reality is, Dennis, every single decision made by Chris Mays, asked and answered, is suspect because of the fact that she's only doing this to weaponize her office.
So you wouldn't fight to save consumers' money?
That wasn't the question you asked. You asked, am I looking forward to going after the Trump administration every day with the resources from our legislature? No. What I'm going to do, Dennis,
people money.
like an attorney that's worked and made a living as an attorney, Dennis,
Okay.
the first thing I'm going to do as Arizona Attorney General
Okay.
is I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to respond to consumers. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call the administration. I was just down in Yuma a few months ago. The Yuma Medical Center down there has over $20 million of unreimbursed services that came from the Biden surges. Imagine if we had an attorney general that was more focused on working with the administration instead of attacking the administration, that could bring those resources home. And that's why every decision, every time that Chris Mays goes on television and opens her mouth, it's damaging to our state, it's damaging to our law enforcement, it's damaging to our kids, and it's damaging to Arizona's prosperity.
All right, gonna have to wrap it there. Thank you for the spirited conversation. You're welcome back anytime.
I would
Rodney
love
Glassman, candidate for Attorney General. And up next, we'll be bringing in a panel, talk about all of this week's major headlines, including a big loss for Turning Point USA. That's next here on Politics Unplugged.
President Trump threatens an entire civilization. Turning Point takes a big L, and Senator Ruben Gallego should wash his mouth with soap. This is your political roundup. The U.S. and Iran agreed to a ceasefire hours after President Trump threatened to destroy the Islamic Republic and its civilization. Vice President J.D. Vance is in Pakistan this weekend to negotiate a long-term peace deal with Iran. Turning Point USA suffered a big loss in the SRP election that appeared to be a referendum on the group founded by the late Charlie Kirk. The slate of liberal, clean energy candidates opposed by TPUSA won control of the power company's board. Maricopa County leaders condemned David Schweikert's attacks on Andy Biggs in a GOP primary race for governor that is turning more negative by the week. Schweikert had accused Biggs of backing racists. County Republicans called it a cheap and lazy attack. Republican Senate President Warren Peterson wants two of Arizona's top Democrats investigated. He's accusing Attorney General Chris Mays and Secretary of State Adrian Fontes of interfering with a federal investigation into the 2020 election. And we end this week's roundup on the lighter, or is it dirtier side. A New York Times analysis found Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego uses the F word on social media more than any other lawmaker on Capitol Hill, and by a lot. Gallego used the dirty word 77 times over the past 6 years, while Representative Derek Van Orden of Wisconsin ranked second, using the word 35 times. And that was your political roundup for the week.
And let's bring in our panel to talk about all of that. Democratic consultant Adam Kinsey and Republican Marcus Dell'Artino, thank you for being there. And guys, promise I'll give you a second to weigh in on the Gallego's use of language here, but that'll be a little bit later. We got to get down to some real business here first. I want to get your top takeaways from the SRP election results. I mean, this is just a strange, weird election. Not only property owners are allowed to participate in, but yet it was highly, it was a high-profile election this year because Turning Point USA decided to get involved in this and oppose a slate of clean energy candidates. So what's the top takeaway here?
Well, first of all, I always have to disclose I represent SRP,
Yes,
but I have absolutely nothing to do with this election whatsoever. So other than I am an SRP customer, so I did get to vote. I will say that, yes, Turning Point was involved, but, much because of this environmentally friendly organization of candidates, which I would say is backed by the Sierra Club. And this fight has been going on quietly for years and years and years, and this year was sort of the pinnacle of it. Turning Point was favored the more establishment candidates, and of course Sierra Club the more environmentally active candidates. I think it was a mixed bag, ultimately, at the end of the day. What Turning Point will say is, if we were not active in getting ballots returned, it would have been a landslide for the Sierra Club. What the environmental Sierra Club side will say is, we won because Turning Point was involved. But at the end of the day, it was somewhat of a mixed bag of results.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, too, the clean energy candidates do control the board, which is kind of the whole ball game, isn't that right?
That's correct, but let's not say that Turning Point lost the election. I love that Turning Point is claiming victory. I hope they continue to send Justine Wadsack door to door. I hope they continue these tactics, and we see the legislature flip because of it. They absolutely lost. They overspent. They outspent the clean slate by an exponential amount of money. It was not an equal amount Sierra Club versus Turning Point. Turning Point was all in on this. They were talking about it for months. They've been out there ballot harvesting and doing a bang-up job of ballot harvesting, which until this election was evil, but they did. It's a big problem for companies like SRP and APS and TEP and all the utilities when people start paying attention to these races. And the bigger one is the Corporation Commission. Can you imagine if people start realizing that they are hiring the foxes to guard the hen house? And so this was just a small version of that. But if they could expand this kind of grassroots energy and elect a clean slate of candidates to the Corporation Commission, then we're in real trouble.
And again, this is kind of a different type of election. It's not your typical election. So what kind of political lessons moving forward can you take away from this? I mean, this was TPUSA's first really big test since Charlie Kirk's passing last year. What can be read out of all this?
You'd have to go through and do some polling and some surveys, some exit results. What was on top of mind of voters going into that election? I mean, a typical election, SRP election, is 8,000 votes. This was 38,000, I think. So it's exploded in growth. Huge turnout in the central city. Abnormal numbers coming out of there. I think that you're probably looking at, people are concerned about affordability. I mean, that is really top of mind, and Democrats are seizing on that message point. And I think a lot of that came out of this, which is, are your rates going to be higher or lower?
Yeah. And it also kind of shows, too, that Turning Point is very good at getting attention. They're good at turnout, but it also works the other way, too, because you can motivate people to come out for you. But it seems like there was a lot of people motivated to come out against this group because they were involved.
Absolutely right. And I'm being glib or trying to make a laugh or make a joke out of, setting the Justine Wadsacks of the world. But they have an army of these, sort of deeply troubled folks who have opinions and worldviews that are contrary to most voters. And so you're sending them door to door, this army of incels led by Justine Wadsack going door to door trying to convince people to vote a certain way. Yeah, it's going to turn out badly. They are absolutely preaching to this very narrow worldview. And if you don't subscribe to that worldview, you're going to get turned off when a Turning Point person shows up at your door. So again, please go out and canvass every single door between now and November, Turning Point.
All right, we're going to have to take a quick break right now. But when we come back, the panel weighs in on President Trump's threat to end a civilization when Politics Unplugged continues. And to get more in-depth on the issues, check out the Politics Unplugged podcast. This week, I'm joined by Arizona Republic reporter Laura Gersoni. The Politics Unplugged podcast drops every Sunday evening wherever you get your podcast. And let's bring the panel back. Thanks for sticking around. Obviously, over the past 10 years, we're used to Donald Trump posting outrageous things on social media. This past week, he did threaten to end a civilization. And for a lot of folks, even who are used to Donald Trump being Donald Trump, this was a bit too far. How do you take this?
Well, you're missing an important component to this. It was over Easter weekend.
Yeah.
And so, the folks that I happen to go to church with were a little disappointed, shall you say, that on Easter Sunday we were having to sort of deal with this. And the bigger warning to the White House on this is the Republican coalition is a delicate coalition. And evangelicals and Christians have a difficult time on Easter Sunday reading these kind of True Social tweets. And so I would urge him to maybe do a little less True Social or Twitter or whatever it is, and maybe focus at the task at hand.
And we've seen a lot of Democrats come out there. Obviously, they're very angry. They're frustrated. Some are calling for the 25th Amendment for the cabinet to remove the president. Some are calling for articles of impeachment. I just want to ask you, all this is kind of meaningless unless Republicans start doing things like this. If you're going to start moving that way, don't you need that kind of buy-in?
Well, the Republican elected officials certainly are not lining up to say anything negative about, talking openly about committing war crimes and killing potentially hundreds of thousands of civilians. Andy Biggs certainly is not. The Glassman, your earlier guest, obviously is going to be silent about it. They're trying to win primaries out there, so that's they're not going to do anything to counter what the president's saying. The voters, on the other hand, he is absolutely losing his coalition. He is losing all of the right-wing, blogosphere type folks, from everybody from Alex Jones to Megyn Kelly. All these folks are coming out and saying, we voted for you not to get us into needless wars. That's all you're doing right now. So he's losing that section. He's also losing a lot of the evangelicals that Marcus was referring to, at least in the sense that they are not supporting him any longer. Now, they don't have to vote for him again, which is a nice thing, but the problem for the Republican Party is it's trickling down to everybody else. The pox on your both houses voters, the Mercutios, I like to call them, I mean, they are really, really upset with the Republicans because of Donald Trump. And the less and less these guys are willing to distance themselves from Trump, the harder it's going to be on them come election time, because last week's polling showed that those pox on both your houses voters are favoring Democrats now by 31 points. That's massive. Young people, Latinos, some of the people that the Republicans made the most inroads with have now gone completely back to supporting Democrats. And in the midterms, you're going to as of right now, you're going to see a landslide, and that's going to keep the president in check.
I would say this is a certain time in history before the election. Everything can change overnight. We know that, number one. And number two is, it's specifically in Arizona, we're still at that point where Democrats aren't registering voters. And so they need to catch up. We've only grown that gap from 3.5% to 7% now. One. Two, at some point they have to come up with a message. What do Democrats stand for, and who's going to deliver that message? So if these environmental things happen and change, and we're out of Iran, and gas is at $2.50 a gallon, my steak is back to a normal price, et cetera, you're still looking at a scenario where Democrats haven't messaged what they stand for.
I see what you're saying, and you're not entirely wrong on this, Marcus, but the other side would be the Democrats have not clearly articulated what they're for, except for a return to more normalcy and decency. And that is enough right now to be leading in every single poll. And in a state where Republicans outnumber Democrats by 350,000 voters, you are still seeing every poll, every betting app, whatever, showing that the Democrats are the ones who are favored to win the top 3 statewide offices. And the legislature looks like it could be in play also, all without the Democrats necessarily clearly explaining their vision. Right now, the vision of we're not Donald Trump, we're not those crazies, seems to be enough to resonate with voters.
I mean, that is kind of the question. I mean, has it gotten so bad that, as Adam was saying, you don't really need to articulate a vision other than you're just not this party for these things?
Again, I come back to the environment can change overnight, and I think it's going to take more than that. I think voters want to know what you stand for just as much as what you're against.
In the presidential, I agree with you 100%. But right now, these midterms are a referendum on the president and the party that he leads. All
right, let's weigh in a little bit now on some state Republican politics here. The county Republican executive committee came out and condemned some attack ads from David Schweikert. These were attack ads that accused Andy Biggs of having ties, hanging around, palling around with white supremacists and anti-Semites. I contend, and you look at that as like this was a few weeks ago, there were some stories about it. I would contend that with the Republican Party, the county Republican Party doing this, voting to condemn this, they didn't do Biggs any favor. What they did was they breathed new life into this old story, correct?
I mean, that is true to a certain extent. However, they're finally exercising Ronald Reagan's 11th Amendment, which is cautioning Republicans about beating the tar out of each other in primaries so that Democrats have an easier time in the general election. So, although I am happy that they did make this statement, and I think it's a cautionary tale to Republicans to stop doing this, they probably should have tried to do it a little bit earlier, like right after the attacks started, so as not to bring up the story again. But again, I think they did the right thing.
We're going to have to end right there, and I apologize. We did not have time to get to Ruben Gallengo's use of the English language there. That is all the time we have. But join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.